And you are live.
All righty. Welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It is Thursday, February 27th, and we're spending a little bit of time today giving bill sponsors who have introduced bills that have been referred to our committee a chance to give us a quick pitch on their bill. So Bob, we'll introduce ourselves and then turn it over to you to introduce yourself for the record. I'm Representative Kathleen James from Bennington 4.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Bennington.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Garrett Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Clinton, Chittenden 13.
Today.
Representative Sebelia may not have gotten that. That's okay. She's ill. All right, for the record.
So I'm Representative Bob Hooper from Chittenden 13, which is the very north end of almost Colchester, Burlington. And I bring to present 8287, which is a simple study committee on a controversial subject. I should start by saying I lived probably a little over 50 miles from 3 Mile Island when it went off. So I'm sympathetic to a lot of people's views on the subject. I tried to rationalize putting together the original parties that were participants in Vermont Yankee and getting them around the table under the supervision of state agency to talk about whether the new forms of power that are available, small scale, sodium cooled, much safer, minimally generating megawatts, but was plausible for, say, Burlington where McNeil is, or the Kingdom where there's another wood chip, or the original Yankee site where there remains infrastructure that could be just tapped into. And also there remains some fuel there, which the newer reactor types have the ability, since they run hotter, to use spent fuel from past generations of power producing. I did this because, one, I read Bill Gates was getting very involved in setting these things up around the country and researching them. There's a project in, I think, Wyoming, where they are building one. They exist in Europe. That seems to be the way that they're producing most of their power now. When I hawked this bill to several of the people, none of which in this room, except by proxy to my fellow Vermontian, it's not designed to bring nuclear power back to Vermont. It's designed to help us reach our climate goals, because I don't think that we're going to do that if we continue to burn wood and other things. It's designed to head off what I think will be a challenge between Microsoft, Google, all the AI factories that are being put up that just suck energy like a truckload out of whatever facility they can get. So when we go to Hydro-Quebec next time to look to extend our contracts, we're going to be in competition for the power that they produce, and it's quite frankly not unlimited. And thirdly, it's an economic development tool. This is the thing that dawned on me when I was watching the plant's construction and inevitable production. You don't see people there. You see machines driven by electricity, doing welding, doing all the other things. So I theorize that we're not going to have adequate tools for economic development if we don't have something in excess energy wise to contribute to that. Highlighted by what former IBM facility, the public service, into allowing them to be their own utility to some degree so they can buy power outside of our network. So it's complicated and involved process, and it's a process that I think generally as America, we have shied away from because of Fukushima and 3 Mile Island, which oddly enough is now in the process of getting reopened. And we're well behind the 8 ball on looking into it. Commissioner of Public Service is interested. I talked to him 2 weeks ago and he was about to go to a conference in Washington on the same thing. So we've talked a little bit. I think this is well supported by the administration in terms of a look-see. It's kind of an inexpensive thing to do for a summer, and could change some people's minds. I mean, I have people in my district that as soon as I had the bill written, I put out to them, this is kind of what I'm doing by Front Porch Forum. And I got people said, I don't want anything to do with nuclear power. So I went back to them and said, these are the reasons we should. And the number of people who changed their mind and say, well, that's valid, I think, was astounding. And it was pretty well received by a lot of people here. And a lot of people said, if I sign on to this bill, my constituents will throw me out. So that was enlightening also. So that's the logic behind it. I look forward to entertaining your questions, snide as they may be.
All righty, Representative Kleppner.
What does your bill do? What does your bill do?
It gets all those people together around the table with some other decision makers, and ideally would make a recommendation as to whether the state should look into facilitating a move towards construction of something. The state in and of itself can't or hasn't ever owned such a facility, but that's not to say that it couldn't.
And do you have a sense for how much the study leading to a recommendation would cost?
I don't have that right in front of me, but I think we allocated a couple of $100,000 for professional blah, 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 people who couldn't testify, things like that. My father was involved in 2 things that are noteworthy these days. He helped Trump build 2 casinos in Atlantic City. And the other thing was he worked at building Seabrook Tom's River in New Jersey, which was a huge old style plant that took 10 years.
Yeah.
And is this study just looking at modular fission plants, or is the purview broad enough to look at fusion as well?
Future.
Fusion.
Well, there is no quote unquote fusion yet. I mean, little ball of it, but it goes away in 22 seconds. It certainly could. I mean, it looks to the future of that type of power, but it is focused on the small sodium coal
Fission plants.
Yeah,
Got it. Thank you.
And I mentioned this in passing before, but because these plants run hotter than the old style Yankee boiling water plants, they can use as fuel some of the leftover stuff that's down there sitting around its gas.
Victoria?
Yeah, I was wondering about the cost of these facilities that
To build?
yeah, compared to the big old school ones, which I know are not, they just don't pencil out anywhere.
I don't think that I know enough to say, and the production of them domestically, it had been like GE and places like that built the big ones. I don't, GE effectively isn't really around anymore. In fact, I have not seen costs, but they're very variable in terms of size. Some, it's written, they come in on the back of the truck. They don't put out a lot of energy. It's, comparable to size. The thing that I like to mention in this is one of the downsides clearly is you have to do something with the leftover fuel. But then I ask you to focus on our submarine fleet that runs 20 years on one fuel. It depends on what you put in as far as what you get out. If you really charge the fuel up to 5 or 6% or higher, it lasts a long time. Expensive to do, but you don't have the remnants to deal with as much as when you're looking at 1 or 2%.
Google's AI search bot said that Gates is spending $4 billion to build a plant in Wyoming, mixture of private and government money.
I think that's big. Did it say what megawatts it's putting in?
It probably did, but I didn't read that part.
Right.
All right. Yeah.
But it's, designed to answer questions, which is one of the reasons we sit here.
Sure.
I have no question.
Yeah.
I have no.
Oh, no questions.
This is a shot.
Oh, you can give your best shot. Yeah, Rep. Allen.
So this is a bill for a study committee to investigate this future and plausibility, whether Vermont money's gonna be involved or is there the permission to let the other?
Well, I think Vermont corporate money would be involved, and I suspect that Vermont state money would be involved in terms of incentives or, things that normally construction would pay, but might be exempted for some reason. Just to sweeten the pot a little bit, but I don't think the state has, as Brent said, an extra $4 billion to throw.
Just a quick run in the schools for a year.
Yeah.
2 years. Representative Morrow.
Do you have a sense of the output capacity of some of these smaller reactors? Like I'm not up to speed on that.
Yeah, I did, but I'm not going to say now because I'm not sure the number. I think Yankee put it around 600, but I'm not sure of its capacity. And I think these things are in the
50 to
10 or
100.
15.
Oh, I see. That's
Yeah.
okay.
So they're it's sort of like regional, which is why it kind of fits into the puzzle of eliminate McNeil, eliminate whatever the one is called up in the kingdom and plop something down right and where Yankee was.
I think they're as small as 15 megawatts.
The one Gates is building, according to Google's AI chatbot, is 345 megs with the ability to go up to 500.
And getting this like
He's making it.
I just,
oh,
I just,
no, I didn't even see you open your laptop.
yes, I did open my laptop while my assistant was distracting you.
One more question.
Mine's just a comment because I Googled this. I recall when I was out west last, Utah had something in the works, but that small scale nuclear project was terminated in 2024 due to financial challenges.
Well,
Complicated projects regardless of.
you bring up a good point though, because when I got married in Hawaii. We flew back to Vegas, picked the car and drove back through. When it amazed me the number of several mile long trains just filled with coal you would pass on the way heading for this. So it's we got to do something. This looks at one of the alternatives.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rep. Hoover.
Certainly.
Yeah, we have our next Shark Tank. welcome to the Shark Tank.
Sorry.
Thanks, Representative Hooper.
Sorry, I was like,
Yeah.
that was a hell of a content.
Representative Maslin.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of this. Speed.
Oh, geez. Thanks for joining us. I will say, I think I mentioned this to you earlier on the stairs. Just for scheduling purposes, we allotted a very generous 15 minutes per bill, but I know you have 3.
I have 3 and I doubt it'll take all that time.
All right, but there's also no rush. We don't have
Well,
anything until 4.
Committee members are welcome to ask as many questions as they want, because I know that's what we do here.
All right, for the record,
Also,
who are you?
I am Representative Jim Maslin, Thetford, Sharon, Stratford, and Norwich. Incidentally, this is my first committee vote a long time ago.
Oh, wow.
I can tell you some stories about it, but another day.
Which committee?
It was House General,
Okay.
and the chair was Tom Costello, if you know,
Wow. Okay.
Costello.
Yeah.
who sat right up there. Everything was this way. Tom Costello sat where you are, sir. But that's, when we run out of other things to talk about.
Well, welcome back. And actually, we should introduce ourselves because it's actually kind of fun doing all the bill pitches because we're meeting new members. So Representative Kathleen James.
Scott Campbell.
Richard Bailey, LaMoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor Bank.
Michael Southworth, Caledonia too.
You wanted to spoke this morning.
Yes, we did.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Territory, Washington too.
Graham Kleffner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Bonjour, monsieur.
No. All right. Representative Maslin.
Yeah, I'll start with the first one first. Energy. Well, it said that these are short length bills.
Yeah.
Much of the content is really in the statement of purpose. And there are ideas that have been kind of floating around in the building before. And it's high time we did something like it, I think. Page 278, and it says the bill proposes to direct the state's electric distribution utilities and Velco to submit to PUC, Public Service, a report including a electric system map identifying where energy storage facilities and flexible load management facilities and how much of each solution would deliver the greatest reliability, affordability, community resilience, and sustainability benefits, which would then be used by the Clean Energy Development Board to award grants. The idea of electric energy storage has been around in Vermont for a period of time, and it's becoming more prescient all the time, given the troubles we have with regards to flooding. Energy shortages, ice storm, remember that from way back when. There's all kinds of things that would benefit Vermont and potentially electric users on our perimeter from energy storage plan and whatnot. And as some of you may know, energy storage is not new. There are a bunch of facilities, developments that are being developed around the state that, as I will explain when we get on to another one of the bills, energy storage is a necessary part of the component of, or necessary components to their development. I'll mention that in a sentence or two and then come back to the plan. There is a former landfill in Thetford, which is slated, hopefully we get there to put a solar array on it. And it's where this bill leads into the next bill, which is there will be required a grid upgrade such that the existing utility lines will be able to accommodate the electricity that'll be put onto the grid once the solar array goes online. And as a way of mitigating the cost of a grid upgrade, it's proposed that energy storage will soak up some of the energy during peak times, peak generation, and then it'll be put back onto the grid when it's appropriate. And so the question of energy storage becomes a necessary component because the existing utility lines, I'm talking about 2 bills at once here, can't accommodate all the electricity at once. And I'll get into the cost factor. The other bill, third bill. But if we're gonna have energy storage facilities throughout Vermont, many of them initially are gonna be rather small, comparatively small. There are beneficiaries throughout Vermont. Initially, the people in the vicinity of the project, the development project. And ultimately, everybody in Vermont, because if we balance our loads, generation and usage, everybody benefits. Right? Grid upgrades are very expensive sometimes. And if the costs for a development of a project can be kept down to something reasonable by virtue of storing energy, we all benefit. Thank you for that, Representative Campbell.
I hear you.
We've worked together on a number of things over the years. And so it seems to me a no-brainer, since more and more of these things are being developed or proposed, that the PUC be aware of where they are, how they're gonna mitigate, take beneficial use of energy that's being generated and stored to the benefit of all of us throughout Vermont, particularly, like say, GMP is large. GMP knows that there's energy stored from time to time. Some of it's just from home generation, and those are kind of small scale. But they ramp up from there, and GMP, I'm sure, plans for home energy generation, whichever you want to call it, and takes advantage. They're a corporation, right? They work this into their business plan, into their energy development and usage plan. And my thought is, by Jesus, we should all benefit. I mean, it's to the benefit of the entire state and our electricity generators and users. If this is done on a much more systematic basis, not just something that, not to pick on GMB, we'll call them CDPS, let's say, right? Not something that CD is aware of and fits into their plan, but something that the whole state is aware of. And it's high time that the PUC participate with the other parties mentioned here in generating, providing a map. Storage fill is a map, in which way, by necessity, because it's their business, the utilities will have a plan to feed out the electricity onto the grid as is appropriate. And so it seems to me that this bill is high time, and it's somewhat of a no-brainer. And I'm aware that we introduce bills and committees do what they do, as take testimony, and other parties who may come into the room will have other ideas. But I would really like to see this go forward to all of our benefit. Utilities benefit. It seems to me at the end of the day, individual users benefit. It's as I said, I think it's a no-brainer. Yes.
Well, I don't want to interrupt you, but
No, I think I don't have a sense.
okay. I was just going to ask, I just skimmed through this really quickly. I don't know if energy storage is defined as batteries, or is it not defined?
I'm not aware that it's defined.
Okay.
I can give you an example with the landfill in Thetford. There's an issue there that we hope to resolve in another bill. It's something we can do. We solve problems here. But energy storage in that case is going to be big banks of batteries that you've probably seen photographs of, that will be on site and will sit schematically, at least between the generators and the grid. So the electricity is generated, goes into big banks of batteries, and as is appropriate for the but the way these systems work.
For the situation. Yeah.
He goes out to the grid, for instance, in evening, at night, when the array is not generating electricity, and when the electricity could be used in the other bill that I'm working on having to do with grid upgrades. The fact that they could generate electricity and then store it basically on site means that the grids wouldn't have to be upgraded as part of the development costs.
Right, because
They can be prohibitively expensive and basically can prohibit a project from going forward. Grid upgrades can be very necessary in order not to overcharge overcharge, whatever you want to call it, ramp up too much electricity for the phase 3 grid that's there. And this is an example of good use of existing facilities for the benefit of the developer, development of the utility there, and basically for the development of all of us here. And I think that we're going to find that that systematic integration of energy sources here and there around the state with other kinds of resource planning are going to become more and more the thing. And why not get with the program and work with growth and grid upgrades, energy storage, it wandered down a rat hole, but just a little rabbit hole for a minute. But artificial intelligence is helping some utilities balance need, cost, production, and usage. And this is maybe we'll need artificial intelligence to figure out how to do that. But it's a coming thing. There's going to be much more utility integration through the use of whatever means we have, whether it's physical, whether it's poles and wires, batteries, or systematic calibration of generation versus usage. And so if I were someone closely associated with the Public Utility Commission, I'd say, geez, they're using an old word. We should be working with the utilities and people around the state to make this happen. And the other bill, the last bill that I have, has to do with socialization of costs. With regards to the landfill and Pepper, I use that one again, it's a good example. If it weren't possible to park the electricity, the electrons in battery storage, the developers would have to pay for a grid upgrade. Those are very expensive. And since at the end of the day, it benefits everybody. It benefits the utility. They get to sell electrons. It benefits users within the service territory, and it benefits all of us in Vermont. Appropriate use of resources, generation, and whatnot. My idea, this has been around for a little while, is that those costs to be socialized across the utility, just like GMP, for example. They say, oh no, it's expensive. We don't want to have to socialize the cost, meaning a portion of the costs around all the users within their district. We don't want to pay for those costs, but yeah, come on. Let's socialize them so that we all benefit. I mean, this is not an oblique idea, I guess I could say. It's something that's been around and necessary, I think, for quite a period of time. And why don't we just face the public and say we're going to share these costs and share the benefits to all of our benefit. So that's two bills there that are closely aligned in costs, in purpose, and benefit. So there we go, Madam Chair. That's two bills in one.
Thank you. That was two bills in one.
And any conversations are welcome, because that's how we figure things out. If you have any questions.
So Jim, in Bill 2, just to make sure I'm understanding, all of the utilities would share in the costs of
I
upgrades
think the way the bill
within and beyond their service territory.
Well, I think the way the bill was written, just because it'll be easier, A, to pass, and B, for the utilities to deal with it, is socialized within the service areas.
I see. Okay.
UMP's area is large, WEC is comparatively small, but we get into some thorny logistical and maybe statutory things if we start requiring WEC to absorb upgrade costs from GMP, for example. And we may get to there at some point in time, but keep it simple, stupid.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I expanded your bill.
So that's
Uh,
okay. Well, it's a fair question because it's why was it drafted this way?
Hmm.
And that is because, within a service territory, it's recognizable, the grid is recognized within that service area. And the cost can be distributed much more simply than they could if we said statewide, you know.
Okay. Questions on these two bills, and then Rep. Maslin has a third bill.
Have you spoken with utilities at all to find out whether they have issues with your bills?
I introduced the socialization of costs bill, with, GFP a while back, and the answer was, why do we want to do that? But the argument is the same either way. I mean, I stated my case to the jury here in the room, and I hope you see the merits of it. And it's something, the longer this goes on, I think the more likely it is that they will come to the conclusion that is, well, yeah, we've got electric generation scattered all around, and it's not integrated. It's not well thought out, either with storage or with where these arrays are built. As you may know, because I'm expanding the argument a little bit, frequently because of the fact that the grid is robust so much in far south other areas. Frequently, it's areas that really could use electric generations. There's no grid to support it, or the grid won't take it on, and so someone has to pay for a grid upgrade, even though in County X or County Y, they really could use the electricity generated locally, not from the other side of the state somewhere. So I mean, so the issue, they're aware of the issue. I've spoken to a former member of this committee as earlier defined natural resources with Robert Dustis, who for a while worked for GMP, and I spoke to him about it. And at that point, he wasn't in a position to enthusiastically jump on my idea. But at that point, GMP was not crazy either.
To be clear, would be in, as opposed to the cost or pays, which is how utilities handle it now.
Right now, I'm a developer. If it's thing in effort, I know the parties were trying to get this through. And I have to pay for it myself. Yeah, basically.
I just wanted to illustrate that.
Yeah, and to add a sentence to that, Representative Campbell, my ability to absorb those costs in a project will be dependent on the actual real cost and how far I can distribute it. And if I have to do it myself, it becomes prohibitively expensive and very difficult.
That was great.
I should also add an editorial comment with regard to that. We are trying to set up an organization, not me personally, so that some electricity could be distributed to lesser people with lesser income as a benefit, not necessarily as part of the PUC application, but it's something we can do. I don't do it. It's a side benefit, I guess you could say. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave.
All right, we're not done with you yet, Jim. You have a weatherization funding and workforce bill.
Yeah, that bill also is, I think I introduced something similar to this last year. I tried to and maybe didn't get it introduced in time. But it's also, as you folks understand, that weatherization, insulation, type of thing sometimes is cutting costs of electricity to the end user is sometimes the most efficient and better way of actually. I'm getting a couple of sentences mixed up here. Sometimes the least expensive way to save energy costs is through weatherization and insulation. Something that can be done often on site. And it's particularly effective for people who don't have resources to pay for what really needs to be done. I've done a whole lot of work over the years in Vermont, somewhat tired infrastructure, shall we say, where they bleed energy. And the cost of taking a lot of energy is really relatively straightforward if you could just get it over the hump. And weatherization is frequently carried out by our CAP agencies, citizen action. Citizen action, what's the
Community action.
yeah, community action, there we go. Requires, someone with some knowledge base, going into an old house, doing an assessment, figuring out, things like storm windows installation, weatherization, meaning stop the bleed of energy going out under doors, around windows, through the attic roof, and all this kind of stuff. And having the expertise and resources to basically carry it forward. Some people may not recognize in a house that doesn't look like it's bleeding energy, the greatest loss of energy is due around the top of the foundation, between the foundation and the first floor. Cold air creeps in, goes up the basement stairs, works its way through the house, goes up the attic hatchway or whatever it is. You don't see it, you don't feel it, but there's a tremendous amount of energy that's lost through a house. It's sort of low family effect from the basement through the attic. Incredible amount of energy that's lost. And a lot of the work that needs to be done is relatively straightforward. It's not hard to train people to do it and recognize where it goes. And it can be very cost effective if it's carried out by skilled people and basically understand what they're looking at. And we had a weatherization program that was fairly effective. But back, I can't remember how many years ago, because there weren't resources to carry that out. And one of the effect was that the trained up personnel went off to do other things. And so what's important is to provide training, resources, and have the staff available, employees on an ongoing basis, so they don't wander off. I use this term, because they have to find employment. And it's not a necessity that's going to go away anytime soon. It doesn't. I mean, I've done this work for 50 years, a lot of others, and so it requires trained personnel. It requires resources for the CAP agencies who basically manage your program, hire staff, ensure that they're adequately trained up, and stuff that's necessary, insulation, weatherization, caulk, foam, kind of stuff like that, is available to actually seal up houses and get them on the program and out the door. And I'm a big supporter of this. There's a lot. It's not hard work. It does require a little concentration. It requires hands-on expertise. But people who like working with their hands, can be trained up to do this work and go for it. And some work can be done. A lot of the work can be done on the off season. I mean, you can get into a basement and open the basement door and whatever it needs to do. And as I said, sealing the gap between the foundation and the first floor framing is remarkably straightforward if you know what you're looking at. But some people simply don't see that it's a great source of cold air coming in. You don't feel it because it just creeps in and goes up the basement stairs. I'm repeating myself and how it goes taking your heat with it. So this bill also has a fee in it, by necessity. We'll have, if it gets out of here and gets out of Ways and Means, we'll have a discussion about the fee. There will be people who are not in favor of it. But we need to bite the bullet and recognize that it's a very cost-effective way to save Vermonters money, energy, So thank you. That's the editorial of this one.
Representative Morrow, did you have any?
Yeah, and on 278, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We've gotten lots of testimony from Belco and ISO New England and all the distributed utilities, and I feel like this storage and load management issue is an important one because they're not on top of. Like the Velco report, their 10-year report has none of that in their scenario planning for the future, although they talk about it in their report at the end there. So I think it's something
Well,
important for us to look at.
I thank you very much for that observation. It's been sitting in the middle of the table here, or in the middle of the room for quite some period of time.
Yeah.
And we dance around it.
Yeah. Well, the cost of storage is coming down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And the ability, the technology around load management is improving very rapidly. And the ability to save money on not having to upgrade distribution and transmission lines is big money if we manage it properly.
It's very big money. And as you understand, once you have poles and wires in place and you have the battery storage in place with upgraded technology, you could manage inflow and outflow much better. And that's going to improve. It's like fiber optic. It's sort of future proof. You have the stuff there and you just use it appropriately and you get more benefit all the time, I think. You can also upgrade the solar panels at some point in time or add more to the array and increase the benefit to everybody.
Rep. Torrey?
Yeah, I'm back on 278. Thank you, by the way, for all of these
Well,
bills.
It's not brilliant.
Great. This has really been a fun day for us.
That's good.
To hear from colleagues on other committees, bringing in their wish lists. I was just thinking, because I have a bill on the wall around the standard offer program,
Yeah.
and in thinking about reinventing it, I thought about storage because it is so important to
Yeah.
site thoughtfully, and then the flexible load management piece, the resilience piece that storage brings to communities.
Yeah.
It's really key. And then I did learn recently that there is a proceeding open, or will soon. No, it is. There's an open proceeding with the PUC that's looking at non-transmission alternatives, particularly GMP, because they're such a big part of our state.
Yeah.
To make sure that we are going to be able to accommodate increased load, after 10 years.
Great.
From electrification. And so your idea of the map is really
Well, I'm
a good one.
I'm an engineer by training, architect by training, and I like to see things in front of me. And it's anyway, so yeah, the answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea of, that it really matters, how valuable something is matters where it is in the
Right.
state.
Yeah.
And what time it's producing. So storage is such an important part of optimizing.
You're talking exactly about energy generation and storage in the Northeast Kingdom where they need it, but may not have the poles and wires to accommodate it. Anyway, no brainer, as I said.
So I guess I need an example about the societal cost and using your Thetford project.
Yeah.
If your investment's $1 million, and I'm trying to figure out how the societal cost, GMP would pay 90% of that, and the rest of the utilities would be a percentage.
Well, the project in Post Mill separate, as an example, is being mapped out and planned for a little while now by Vermont Solar Technologies, White River, and was held up largely because or hadn't gone forward. We have an issue that I can talk about, but largely because of the cost of the grid upgrade. That was the first thing. And that project will be paid for as it normally would be. Electricity goes on the grid, users pay for the electricity. There's not if I understood you correctly, my bill doesn't charge anybody new with anything new. It basically just says the grid upgrade is going to be that aspect of the cost will be distributed among users of electricity on the grid through GMP's poles and wires. So there is an incremental cost. but it is not 90% of anything. I suppose we could get or solar technologies to come and testify on the bill about the percentage of the development cost, and time's been running here while they're trying to get this going. That'll be attributed to what would be a grid upgrade that we could spend out through the. I can get that information for you. I'd be glad to get some information for you. They like the idea, of course, because if there's going to be a grid upgrade, they just to see it spread around users. I mean, we could say on one hand, it's spread throughout GMP's price structure, but ultimately it all comes down to the electricity users. So the electricity users within that service area would see an incremental cost increase for the grid upgrade, and I can get that information for you. Happy to do it. It's a fair question. And GMP or CDPS or something to use my, would prefer not to have to do that because they're in the electricity of selling electricity. They're in the business of selling electrons without incremental cost. But using folks, let's look at the big picture here. So I hope I've answered your question, and I can ask Norwich Solar to give me an example of some of this sort of stuff. They want to go forward with it. They know they have battery costs, and they have whatever the costs of the development are. And they've been hanging with us here now for a while we resolved some issues. One actually has to do with who actually owns this, because the Mr. Barker, who started the landfill a long time ago, passed away without apparent heirs. So, but we're working through that. One, as a friend of mine said, break the sticks one at a time. And but I'm happy to get you that because that's a good question. I can get you good information.
Thank you.
Representative Howland?
So you have a parcel of land, old landfill, whatever, with maybe not much other use, but wouldn't this idea work? Instead of being in Thetford's a small 5 kVA MVA transformer. What if it were over in a more densely populated, like this storage technology is in Rutland, a massive landfill covered with batteries and so forth, and very close to the load. Matter of fact, it's on a circuit that can even stand alone, separated from the sub-transmission and the Belco lines without a utility upgrade to any of the 46 kV sub-transmission or the 115 kV.
Good question.
Belco transmission, which is not more than not more than 15 utility poles away from this.
Yeah, no, I guess I'd say it's a question of proportion. For example, if it's in Rutland and there's a big array and it's going to go out on the grid and there's no upgrade needed, well, there's no actually increased cost, right? It goes directly out to the grid.
Well, there's a small incremental cost to get from
but that's
postage stamp out to
that's part of
the distribution system, and whether you get two sides or whatever. But my point being that why you're making electricity in Thetford that's ultimately going to be trickle drained through small conductors 24 hours a day. You're going to make a bunch, you're going to store it, and then you're going to run it through a small garden hose to the rest of the state. And if Green Mountain Power does socialize their capital investments through their rate structure and their cost recovery.
Of course they do.
And so why would the people of Vermont benefit for benefit of a small corporation being Green Mountain Power rather than the state of
the people of Vermont and GMP customers writ large will benefit if there is a better mechanism to build smaller scale, shall we say, renewable energy facilities in places where they're really needed, where there's not enough electricity. and socialize a portion of the cost, which basically just a grid upgrade, not the whole array, not the whole, the battery storage, not all that sort of stuff.
Can you give us some indication of the size of this project?
I will, rather
Megawatts?
than wing it, Chris, I will represent it. I will get you some information and get it back to you, but this has been in the works for a period of time. It's not teeny weeny. It is, reasonably sized, so it would be appropriate for the area and a good use, a good example of what we're trying to do. So I'll bring in this stuff both with regards to cost. Basically, I'll ask Norwich Solar Technology that provide me with the information and the questions you're asking, because if you don't ask them, someone else will. So why don't we just
I'd say, Rep. Maslin, that's great, if you have the time and if you can get it, and if this is an idea we're interested in as a committee, we would then start
Well, I'll get
the
some
full process, Rep. Outland, of taking testimony and getting information.
reasonable questions. I mean, I know these guys.
Okay,
I'm happy to ask them the basic questions. And I'm sure they could give it to me tomorrow afternoon if I ask for it. You know, it's just, but maybe next week.
sounds good. I think you're a little bit busy on Ways and Means, but if you've got the opportunity to
Well, it's
get it to us, that's great.
same answers for everybody. It's our job,
Okay,
right? And single boodle. Okay, thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Representative Maslin, thank you so much. Get back up to Ways and Means and get that funding project
lot of
done.
fun.
Cross that off your list today.
A lot of fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack, we